From the outside, everything about our family looked perfect. My mother, Uriel, always carried herself with elegance and control. Coleman, her charming husband, had the kind of confidence that won people over instantly. And then there was me, the quiet daughter who had come back home. To anyone watching, we probably looked like a flawless little family. But behind those closed doors, things were far from perfect. Desire slowly turned into betrayal, and the man I was supposed to see as my stepfather became something completely different to me. I never planned for it to happen. I never wanted to hurt my mother. But once that invisible boundary was crossed, there was no going back. That's how everything began to fall apart. That's how I slowly became the villain inside my own mother's house. Hi everyone, welcome back to Lauren Ponce. If you're new here, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. And to everyone who keeps coming back, thank you for being here. People always said we looked like the perfect family. My mother, Uriel, Coleman with his confident smile and polished charm, and me beside them. In photos, we looked like we belonged on the cover of a magazine. What no one could see was how staged those moments really were. Every smile I forced for her Facebook posts or dinner party pictures felt fake, like I was playing a role in someone else's life. The truth is, people rarely notice the cracks until everything finally breaks. My mom married Coleman when I was 17. At that time, I was still struggling with the loss of my father. His absence hung over the house like an echo that never faded. Then suddenly, Coleman stepped into our lives. He was confident, smooth, and somehow slid into our world as if he had always belonged there. I hated how easily he fit in. I hated hearing him call me kiddo, like he was trying to earn approval for being the good guy. But what bothered me the most was how different my mother became around him. With my father, she had always seemed restrained, almost distant. But with Coleman, she laughed more, dressed up more, and smiled like she was living in some new chapter of her life. Watching that change stirred something bitter inside me. By the time I turned 21 and moved back home after college for a break, I wasn't the same girl anymore. I had grown into my own person, with stronger opinions and a sharper edge. My mother didn't like that version of me. We argued constantly about everything: my clothes, my sleeping habits, the people I dated. She called me reckless. I thought she was overly controlling. Coleman usually stepped into the middle whenever we clashed, playing the role of the calm mediator. One day, after another argument ended with my mom storming out of the room, he looked at me and said, "You know, you're a lot like her. Strong, stubborn, passionate. It's not a bad thing, just hard to deal with sometimes." What I noticed more than the words was the way he looked at me when he said them. His gaze lingered just a little longer than it should have. At first, I convinced myself I was imagining it. Maybe I was reading too much into a glance or a casual compliment. But it kept happening. Small remarks slipped into conversations. Moments when he lingered to talk after my mother had already gone to bed. He noticed things. When I changed my hairstyle, the way I cooked breakfast, little details that most people ignored. It was subtle, but impossible to ignore. One night, my mom was working late on a big project at her tech company, and I stayed in the living room watching a thriller. Coleman walked in wearing sweatpants and a fitted shirt that showed off his build. Without asking, he sat down next to me on the couch, close enough that our knees almost touched. "You always pick good movies," he said as he grabbed some popcorn from my bowl. I laughed. "Don't pretend you like thrillers. You're the romantic comedy type." He leaned back with a relaxed grin. "You'd be surprised." The air between us felt heavy with something neither of us said out loud. I could feel the warmth from his body, hear the steady rhythm of his breathing, and it made my heart race in a way that had nothing to do with the movie. Later, I stood up to grab a drink, and as I walked past him, he said quietly, "You've really grown up, Chelsea. Seeing you now, it's different." That was the moment I knew I hadn't imagined anything. I told myself it was harmless, just a poorly chosen compliment, but the feeling it left behind stayed with me the entire night. I knew Coleman was dangerous, and somehow that made it impossible to ignore him. The next morning, I walked into the kitchen wearing a tank top without a bra, almost like I was testing him. My mom was still asleep, leaving just the two of us there. He looked. I caught it instantly. He didn't say a word, but the intensity in his eyes said everything. Instead of feeling embarrassed, I felt something else. Control. Power. Later, my mother rushed in like she always did, wrapped in perfume and dressed for another busy day, barely noticing the silent tension in the room. If she saw the way Coleman's attention followed me, she never showed it. Maybe she didn't want to. Weeks passed like that. Little games, quiet moments, growing tension that felt like a storm waiting to break. I didn't fully understand what I wanted. I only knew that being noticed by him made me feel alive, chosen, even though he was the one person I was never supposed to look at that way. One afternoon, I caught him watching me from inside the house while I lay by the pool. I was stretched out in a black bikini, sun warming my skin. Through the glass doors, I saw him standing there with a drink in his hand, staring. I slowly rolled over on the chair and untied the strings behind my back, taking my time. A moment later, I heard the door slide open. "You should be careful, Chelsea," he said quietly. "Someone might misunderstand." I looked up at him over my sunglasses. What if it's not a misunderstanding? He didn't reply, but he didn't walk away either. That was the real beginning. Not the looks or the comments, but that silent moment in the sun when we both knew something had shifted. A line had been crossed, and neither of us tried to step back from it. "Your mother doesn't really see you," I once told him while we were lying in his car late at night, parked in the driveway where the darkness kept us hidden. He didn't respond right away. He simply held my hand and stared up at the roof of the car, as if he was thinking about something far away. Moments like that made it easier to justify what we were doing. In my mind, I started painting Uriel as this distant woman, someone so wrapped up in her career and her success that she couldn't even notice her own husband drifting away. Deep down, I knew that wasn't completely fair, but believing it helped me live with myself. It made the betrayal feel less ugly, less like I was the villain in my own life. At home, I began changing the way I dressed. Tighter shirts, shorter shorts, anything that would make Coleman's attention follow me a little longer. Sometimes I noticed my mother frown when she looked at me, but she never said anything about it. Maybe she thought it was just a phase, a young woman pushing boundaries. Or maybe she truly didn't care. Part of me wanted her to notice. I wanted some reaction from her. Jealousy, suspicion, anything at all. But she stayed quiet. And that silence made something inside me grow bitter. Coleman stopped feeling like just a man who lived in the house. In my mind, he was mine. Even though I could never say it out loud, even though in public he still played the role of my mother's perfect husband, I didn't think much about where it would all end. I wasn't planning for the future. I was caught in the excitement of it, the rush that made my stomach twist and my chest feel tight. Every stolen moment felt electric. But even in those quiet hours when everything slowed down, I could feel the edge of danger creeping closer. It wasn't just the fear of getting caught. The real danger was what would come afterward. And somewhere deep down, I knew a secret like ours could never stay hidden forever. At first it felt thrilling, like playing with fire just for the excitement of the flame. But slowly I began to realize the heat was spreading. Our downfall didn't happen in one dramatic instant. It was gradual, like a thread being pulled loose until the whole fabric began to fall apart. The thrill that once excited me slowly turned heavy inside my chest, but by then, stopping felt impossible. Coleman and I had become careless. That's what happens when you convince yourself you're untouchable, when your own lies start to feel like truth. We got too comfortable, too confident that Uriel would never figure it out. Until she did. It began with small things. The way her eyes lingered on us a little longer than usual. The subtle change in her voice when she asked where I had been, or why Coleman hadn't come to bed yet. She never accused us directly, But the tension in the house shifted, and if I'm honest, a part of me almost wanted her to find out. I wanted the truth to crack the perfect image she held onto so tightly. I wanted to prove she didn't control everything. But when that moment finally came, it hit far harder than I expected. It happened on a Thursday evening. Rain tapped softly against the windows, and the house smelled like rosemary chicken, my mother's favorite dish to cook. She seemed unusually relaxed, smiling at something on her phone while Coleman poured glasses of wine. I sat across the table trying to act normal, even though my heart felt like it was pounding out of my chest. Then she said it. "So, Chelsea," she said casually, slowly swirling the wine in her glass, "how long have you been sleeping with my husband?" Everything stopped. The room felt empty, like the air had suddenly vanished. I froze in place. Coleman stiffened beside her. "I asked you something," she continued calmly, her voice dangerously steady as she stared straight at me. "Do you want me to repeat it?" My throat tightened. I don't know what you're talking about." She let out a short, bitter laugh. There was no humor in it. "You really think I haven't noticed?" she said. "The looks, the little touches, you both think I'm stupid." Coleman stood up quickly. "Uriel, just calm down." Her head snapped toward him. "Don't you dare tell me to calm down," she shot back, rising from her chair. Then she turned toward me, her voice shaking with fury. "I took you in. I gave you everything. And this is how you repay me?" My voice trembled. "It wasn't supposed to happen." "But it did," she cut in sharply. "And you both made sure of that." For a moment, her expression cracked. Not with tears, but with something deeper. The pain in her eyes looked like it was tearing her apart. Then she faced Coleman. "I gave you everything too," she said quietly. "My love, my trust, my daughter." The silence that followed was suffocating. The weight of what we had done filled the room like smoke. Uriel suddenly turned and walked out, slamming the bedroom door behind her so hard the sound echoed through the house like a final judgment. Coleman didn't follow her. He just stood there, frozen, as if staying perfectly still might somehow undo everything. "What do we do now?" I whispered. He looked at me, his eyes empty. "I don't know." The days after that felt unreal. Uriel barely spoke to either of us. The house felt cold and hollow, like something had died inside it. Whenever we passed each other in the hallway, her silence cut deeper than any argument could have. Coleman tried to talk to her, tried to repair something that was already broken beyond repair. Finally, one morning she spoke to me while sitting at the kitchen table with her coffee. "You should leave," she said quietly without looking up. "I'll help you pay for an apartment, your tuition, whatever you need. But you can't stay here." For a second, I wanted to argue. I wanted to shout that it wasn't entirely my fault, that she had never really seen me or understood me. But none of those words would erase what had happened. So I packed my things. Coleman didn't say much during those final hours. At one point, our eyes met across the room. No touch, no words, just a quiet, painful understanding between us. Then I left. I moved into a small apartment near campus. It was simple and quiet, almost too quiet. Some nights I lie awake wondering how things might have turned out if I had stopped everything before it started. But then I remember how alive I felt in those moments, how wanted. And the truth is, I don't completely regret it. Uriel never forgave me, and honestly, I don't blame her. Coleman tried to reach out once. He sent a message on my birthday. I deleted it without even opening it. There's a scar from all of it now, something that will probably never fully disappear. But I carry it with me. Because betrayal doesn't wait for permission. It doesn't arrive at the perfect moment. It simply happens. And when the story finally ends, you're left standing in the darkness wondering if the applause you once heard was ever really meant for you. Chapter 20. Were you able to reflect on this story? Have you ever imagined yourself in a situation like this? What would you have done differently? Subscribe and turn on notifications for more emotional and powerful stories like this.